My daughter-in-law sent me a text at 7 in the morning on my 65th birthday. Not a happy birthday. Not even an excuse. Just 11 words. We won't be coming today. Daniel thinks it's for the best. My son didn't call, didn't text, didn't send so much as a birthday emoji from the man I'd pushed into this world 38 years ago. I sat at my kitchen table in Portland, Maine with my coffee going cold and my good china already set for 6 people. And I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I called my attorney, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a woman who spent 40 years taking care of everyone else finally learned to take care of herself. My name is Margaret Calloway. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 65 years old, a retired nurse, and I live alone in the house on Birchwood Lane, where my husband Robert and I raised our 2 children for 31 years. Robert died of pancreatic cancer 4 years ago, 8 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. The cruelest disease there is, the doctors told me, as if knowing that was supposed to help. It didn't. What I remember most about those 8 weeks is how fast everything moved. The diagnosis on a Tuesday, the hospice consultation the following Monday, Robert squeezing my hand and saying, "Maggie, you're going to be fine. You've always been the strong one." He believed that. I'm not sure I ever did. After he died, the house got very quiet. 31 years of a full-life dinner smells and muddy boots by the door, and Robert's baseball games on too loud and then nothing, just the furnace clicking on at night and my own footsteps on the hardwood floors. I'd come home from the hospital after his funeral and stood in the kitchen for 20 minutes before I remembered I didn't need to make dinner for 2 anymore. That's when it started. The fear, not of being alone, exactly, more like the fear of becoming invisible, of slowly disappearing from the lives of the people I loved most. Daniel is my oldest. He's 38, works in software, lives 40 minutes away in Falmouth with his wife Amanda. They've been married 6 years. Amanda is 35, pretty in a sharp-featured way, smart, and absolutely certain she is the most important person in any room she walks into. She never liked me, though she was polished enough to hide it for the first 2 years. After Robert died, she stopped trying. My daughter Claire is 35, married to Brad, a high school science teacher. They have a 7-year-old named Lily, who has Robert's green eyes and my stubborn streak. Claire and Brad live in South Portland, 20 minutes from me, close enough that I saw them often, or thought I did. 6 months after Robert died, Daniel called. He sounded strange, careful, like he was reading from a script. "Mom, Amanda and I are having some cash flow issues. Nothing serious, but we're a little behind on the mortgage." He named a number. $2,000. I asked no questions. I transferred it that afternoon. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. 2 months later, Claire called crying. Brad had taken on extra tutoring, but they were still short. Lily needed new glasses. The insurance copay was outrageous. Could I help out? Just this once? I sent $1,500. The pattern that formed over the next 3 years wasn't dramatic. It didn't happen all at once. It was incremental, the way a tide comes in. You don't notice until the water is at your knees. Daniel began calling every 4 to 6 weeks. Always something new. Amanda's car needed tires. They were behind on property taxes. Amanda had wanted to take a course for her professional development, and it wasn't cheap. I never spoke to Amanda directly on these calls. Daniel made all the asks, voice carefully neutral, but I could hear her in the background sometimes. A murmur. A prompt. Claire was more emotional about it. She'd cry on the phone and tell me I was the only person who understood how hard it was to raise a child on 2 salaries in this economy. That always worked. I have never been able to stand hearing my daughter cry. I set up automatic transfers eventually, because the monthly calls felt undignified for both of us. $1,500 to Daniel, $800 to Claire, first of every month. In addition to the extras, in addition to Lily's birthday gifts and back-to-school shopping, and the time Brad's car needed a new transmission, and the time Claire's furnace died, and the time Daniel and Amanda went to Costa Rica for their anniversary, and Daniel called 2 weeks before to say they were a little tight, and he hated to ask, but could I help cover the flights? I helped cover the flights. I told myself this was what Robert would have wanted. Our family close, cared for, together. I told myself this was what mothers did. I told myself I wasn't lonely. I wasn't desperate. I was just generous. The first sign I refused to see came at Thanksgiving 3 years after Robert died. I spent 2 days cooking. Turkey brined overnight. In Robert's recipe, his mother's clam chowder, which takes 3 hours. Homemade pie, 2 kinds. I polished the silver and ironed the tablecloth and put the good napkins in the rings Robert's mother had left us. Daniel and Amanda arrived 45 minutes late. Amanda walked past me into the living room without taking off her coat, scrolling through her phone. Daniel gave me a half hug and headed straight for the kitchen to check what was on the stove. Not to help, just to look, the way you look at a menu. Claire and Brad arrived 20 minutes after that. Brad sat on the couch and turned on the football game. Claire set Lily down and immediately disappeared into the bathroom for 15 minutes. Only Lily ran to me. Grammy, Maggie. She climbed into my lap and patted my face with both hands. You smell like pie. You always smell like pie. I held her tighter than I probably should have and breathed her in and told myself it was enough. Dinner was lukewarm. Nobody mentioned it. Amanda spent most of the meal responding to texts, holding her phone under the table as if that made it invisible. Daniel and Brad talked about football. Claire picked at her food and mentioned twice that the stuffing was a little dry. I'd made that stuffing from scratch using the recipe I'd clipped from a cooking magazine the year Daniel was born. At 5:30, Daniel pushed back from the table. We should probably head out. Amanda was already standing, gathering her bag. I looked at the dishes, the untouched leftovers, the 2 pies cooling on the counter. So soon? We told the Hendersons we'd stop by. Amanda's tone was perfectly pleasant and completely final. Claire and Brad left 15 minutes later. Brad carried Lily to the car, already half asleep. Claire paused at the door. Oh, Mom. The transfer was a couple days late this month. Just wanted to check you. Didn't forget. Not thank you. Not the food was wonderful. Not are you okay spending the holiday alone after the dishes are done. Just had I remembered to send the money. I stood in my kitchen until I heard their cars leave. Then I sat down on the floor with my back against the cabinets and cried for 40 minutes, but I didn't change anything. I told myself this was normal. Grown children had their own lives. This was what family looked like now. The birthday invitation was my idea. I don't know why I thought this year would be different. Maybe because 65 felt significant. A milestone. Robert had always made enormous productions of birthdays. Streamers and his terrible homemade cake and the way he'd sing happy birthday with absolutely no regard for the correct melody. I missed him so badly that winter it felt like a physical weight on my chest. I sent a text to the family group chat 6 weeks in advance. I'd love to have everyone over for my birthday. March 14th. I'll cook a real dinner. Let me know if you can make it. Claire responded immediately. Of course, wouldn't miss it. Brad sent a thumbs up. Daniel took 3 days. Should work. We'll confirm closer to the date. Amanda never responded at all. I bought a new tablecloth, ordered a centerpiece, defrosted the good roast I'd been saving. March 14th arrived, and at 7 in the morning, before I'd even had my coffee, my phone lit up with Amanda's name. We won't be coming today. Daniel thinks it's for the best. I stared at the message for a long time. Daniel thinks it's for the best, as if my son had been consulted about my own birthday. As if Amanda was delivering his verdict on my behalf. I texted back. Can I speak to Daniel? 3 dots appeared. Then, he's busy. Sorry for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. My son's absence from my birthday was an inconvenience. I waited to hear from Daniel directly. 40 minutes passed. An hour. I texted him, Are you coming today? Nothing. Not even the courtesy of 3 dots. At 9 in the morning, Claire called. Her voice was too bright, too careful. Mom, I heard about Daniel and Amanda. I just want to say, I'm still coming. A pause. Actually, Brad has this thing with his work today, a meeting that got moved, but Lily and I will definitely be there. They arrived at 2 in the afternoon, 2 hours after they were supposed to. Lily ran inside and immediately asked if I had cookies. Claire hugged me briefly and looked around the decorated table with an expression I couldn't quite read. At 3:15, she said Lily was tired and they should probably head out. I said, of course. I spent my 65th birthday washing dishes alone. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the March wind off the water, and turned the same questions over and over. What had I done wrong? What was I doing wrong? I thought about the last 4 years. The money, the holidays, the careful way Daniel always called but never quite connected, the way Amanda looked through me at family events, as though I were a piece of furniture she didn't like but couldn't get rid of. At 2 in the morning, I got up and went to Robert's desk. I still kept it the way he left it. His reading glasses in the top drawer, his retirement paperwork in the second. I sat down in his chair and opened my laptop and did something I had never done. I went back through 4 years of bank statements and wrote down every transfer, every payment, every gift, every emergency. The number that emerged after 2 hours of work made me physically cold. $192,000. Not all of it from Robert's life insurance, some of it from my own savings. From the part-time work I'd picked up after retirement at a private care agency, $192,000 in 4 years. My children had received nearly my entire financial safety net, and what I had gotten in return was a text on my birthday telling me my son thought it was best not to come. I sat at Robert's desk until the sun came up. Then I picked up my phone and called Eleanor Marsh. Eleanor had been our family attorney for 20 years. She was 70, still working 3 days a week, and she'd known Robert since before the kids were born. When she answered, her voice was careful and steady in that way that some people develop after decades of hearing hard things. "Maggie, I heard it was your birthday yesterday." "It was," I said. "Eleanor, I need to come in." Eleanor's office was the same as it had always been. The framed botanical prints, the dark wood desk, the smell of old paper and good coffee. She sat across from me and reviewed what I'd brought. The spreadsheet, the printed bank statements, screenshots of every text where money had been requested. Her expression didn't change while she read, but her hands went very still. $192,000, she said finally. "Yes, Maggie, this isn't generosity anymore." She set the papers down and took off her reading glasses. "This is exploitation. You're 65, recently widowed, living alone. In Maine, this pattern of behavior, escalating financial demands combined with emotional manipulation, can qualify as elder financial abuse." I'd expected to push back on that word, elder, but I found I couldn't. I gave it willingly. Under pressure, under fear of losing your relationships with your children, she tapped the birthday text. This kind of emotional withholding, as retaliation or leverage, is coercion. It doesn't matter that no one held a gun to you. She leaned forward. "Can I ask you something directly?" "Of course. Have you ever skipped your own needs, medications, repairs, groceries to send them money?" The kitchen faucet had been leaking for 8 months. I kept meaning to call a plumber. Once or twice, I admitted. Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Here's what I want you to do. First, we change your will. Right now, everything goes to Daniel and Claire equally. We're going to change that significantly. Second, I want you to document every contact going forward, every call, text, visit, date, and time. Third, you need to stop the automatic transfers immediately. Today." The last instruction hung in the air between us. "What happens when they notice?" I asked. "They'll call," Eleanor said, "and we'll see exactly who they are." I drove home and sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes. Then I went inside, opened my banking app, and canceled both automatic transfers. Daniel's $1,500, Claire's $800. I waited. Daniel called that evening. His voice wasn't angry, which surprised me. It was careful and quiet, the voice he used when he was trying to manage a situation. "Mom, the transfer didn't come through." "I know." Silence. "Is something wrong with the account?" "No." Another silence. Longer. "So you canceled it?" "Yes." His exhale was slow. "Mom, Amanda and I depend on that." "I know you do," I said. "That's something we need to talk about." "Can we come over tomorrow?" He said we. I already knew what that meant. "If you'd like." Claire called 20 minutes later. Her voice was higher, faster, the tone she'd had as a teenager when she'd done something she didn't want me to find out about. "Mom, Brad's check from school isn't posting until next week, and the $800 was supposed to cover." "I'll talk to you tomorrow," I said. "Come at noon." I slept better than I had in months. They arrived within minutes of each other, which told me they'd coordinated. Daniel's car pulled in at 12:02. Claire and Brad 2 minutes behind him. Amanda came in first, which she often did, as though she were entering a place that already belonged to her. She looked beautiful and composed in a way that had always made me feel slightly disheveled by comparison. Daniel hugged me at the door, an actual hug, the kind that surprised me with its length. Then he stepped back and I saw how tired he looked. Really tired, the kind that lives behind the eyes. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer coffee this time. Amanda spoke first. Maggie, we understand this might feel like a boundary-setting moment for you, and we completely respect that. The therapy speak was practiced smooth, but we've structured our lives around a certain level of— Amanda, I said, I'd like to hear from Daniel. Her mouth closed. Daniel looked at his hands. Mom, we're in a tough spot financially. The house needs work. Amanda had some unexpected expenses last year. He stopped. Something about the pause told me he didn't know what those expenses were. We've relied on your help. I know that. He looked up. I'm sorry we didn't come to your birthday. Claire leaned forward. Mom, this feels like a punishment. We have a child. So does Daniel. I paused. Actually, I want to ask you both something. When was the last time you called me and didn't need something? Silence. Not asked if I was doing okay. Not called because you needed money, or a babysitter, or a favor. Just called to talk. More silence. Brad stared at the floor. Amanda's expression was completely unreadable. I keep a journal, I said. I started writing down our calls after Robert died. When they happened, how long they lasted, what we talked about. I picked up a small notebook from the side table. I'd gone through it the night before. In the last 14 months, Daniel, you called me 22 times. 19 of those calls involved a financial request. In 3 of them, we just talked. I looked at Claire. You called 31 times. 26 involved a request. That includes the time you called to ask me to babysit Lily while you and Brad went to Bar Harbor for a weekend. I set the notebook down. I don't exist to you unless you need something from me. And I let that happen. I'm taking responsibility for my part in that. My voice stayed steady, which surprised me. But I'm not going to keep participating in it. Amanda's composure cracked first. That's an incredibly unfair characterization. Her voice was sharp now, the polish gone. Daniel has supported you emotionally. Through everything, has he? I said. He didn't call on my birthday, Amanda. He didn't call on the anniversary of Robert's death. He didn't call when I had a minor procedure last fall that your own daughter told me she'd passed along to you. I looked at my son. Did you know I had a procedure? Daniel's face changed. What procedure? A cyst, benign. But I was nervous for 2 weeks. I watched him absorb that. Claire told me she'd mentioned it to you. Claire looked at the window. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Brad, who had not said a single word, put his elbows on his knees and said, She did mention it, Daniel. I was there. Daniel looked at his wife. Amanda stood. I don't need to sit here and be interrogated. She picked up her bag. When you're ready to have a rational conversation, Maggie, you know where to find us. She walked out. The front door opened and closed. Daniel didn't move. He sat in the chair with his hands on his knees and said nothing for a long time. Then, I didn't know about the procedure. I know. She said she told me. His voice was flat. I know that too. He looked at me, and for the first time in 4 years, I saw the face of the boy I'd raised instead of the carefully composed man he'd become around his wife. How much have you given us, Mom? Total. $192,000. The number sat in the room like something heavy set down on the floor. That can't be right. I have the spreadsheet in the kitchen. He didn't move for a long time. Then he got up and went to the kitchen. I heard him at the table. Pages turning. Silence. More silence. When he came back, his face had gone gray. I knew about some of it, he said quietly. I didn't know about all of it. He sat down heavily. Mom, you don't have to say anything today. I didn't know she was. He stopped. I need to go. He stood, and then he did something that undid me completely. He came over and hugged me again. Not a careful hug. A real one. Both arms. The way he'd hugged me at Robert's funeral when he'd finally let himself cry. I'm sorry, he said against my shoulder. I'm so sorry. After they all left, I called Eleanor. Document everything, she said. Every word of what happened today. What was said? Who was present? She paused. Maggie, I want you to be prepared. It may get harder before it gets easier. She was right. 3 weeks later, Eleanor called me at 8 in the morning. Come in today if you can. I found her standing at her desk holding a document, which she handed to me without sitting down. It was a petition to the probate court. I read my own name and didn't understand it at first, and then I did. Claire and Brad had filed a petition requesting that a financial conservator be appointed to manage my assets, on the grounds that I was showing signs of cognitive decline and was at risk of financial self-harm. Claire did this, I said. My voice came out strange and very far away. Claire and Brad. They submitted a supporting letter from a physician named Dr. Gareth Connolly. Eleanor set another paper on the desk. Dr. Connolly has never examined you. He's Brad's uncle. I sat down. They're claiming, Eleanor continued, more quietly, that your cancellation of the automatic transfers represents irrational behavior consistent with a deteriorating mental state. They've also submitted a statement from Amanda. I looked up. Claire and Amanda are apparently working together. Yes. Eleanor sat down across from me. Amanda's statement supports the petition. She describes you as increasingly paranoid and emotionally erratic since Robert's death. I was quiet for a moment, listening to the blood in my own ears. What do we do? First, you get a comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation. I've already called Dr. Susan Pratt at Maine Medical. She's the best in the state, fully independent, no connection to anyone involved. She can see you Thursday. Eleanor folded her hands on the desk. Second, I'm filing a countermotion today. Third, we're going to court. And Maggie? She met my eyes. You're going to be fine, because there is nothing wrong with you, doctor. Susan Pratt was small and methodical and had a calm that I recognized from decades of nursing. She ran me through 4 hours of testing over 2 days. Memory tasks, reasoning problems. She asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens, to recall a sequence of unrelated words, to draw the face of a clock set to 10 past 11. She asked me about Robert's illness and death. She asked why I'd made the financial decisions I had. I answered her completely and honestly. On the second day, she closed her folder and looked at me directly. Mrs. Calloway, your cognition is excellent. Your memory is above average for your age. There is no evidence of decline of any kind. She paused. What I see is a woman who made financial decisions out of grief and fear of abandonment, who has now recognized those patterns and taken corrective action. That's not deterioration. That's growth. I cried in her office. She passed me the tissues without comment, the way good nurses do, and waited. The hearing was held on a Monday in late April. The courtroom was small, the kind with fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look slightly unwell. Claire sat at the petitioner's table in a dark blazer, Brad beside her. Amanda was not present. Daniel was not there either, which I hadn't expected and which hurt in a quiet, precise way. Their attorney was a man named Franklin Hooper. Young and very confident in a new suit, he presented the petition clearly and cited Brad's uncle's letter and Amanda's statement. He used words like declining judgment and financial vulnerability and loving family intervention. He did not look at me once while he spoke. Judge Rosalind Ferris was in her late 50s with the eyes of a person who had heard every version of every story and was not impressed by any of them. She read Dr. Pratt's report with complete stillness. Then she looked up. Mr. Hooper, the physician who submitted the supporting letter for this petition, he has never examined Mrs. Calloway? He based his assessment on family accounts. That's hearsay. What documented interaction has he had with Mrs. Calloway? A pause. None. And Mrs. Calloway's personal physician of record, has she submitted any concerns? She has not. Dr. Pratt's evaluation is comprehensive and unambiguous. The judge set the report down. The petitioner's claim rests on the assertion that Mrs. Calloway's decision to stop funding her adult children constitutes evidence of cognitive impairment. She looked at Claire. How long has your mother been making these monthly transfers? About 4 years. And when she stopped, you filed for conservatorship. We were worried about her judgment. You were worried about your income. The judge's voice didn't change pitch, which made it worse somehow. Mrs. Calloway made a financial decision you didn't like. That is not incompetence. That is her legal right. She turned to Brad. The physician who submitted supporting documentation is your uncle. Is that correct? Brad's face went red. He's a doctor. He's a family member with a conflict of interest who submitted an assessment without ever examining the subject. Judge Ferris closed the file. Petition denied. She looked directly at Claire. I want to be very clear. What you have attempted here, using the legal system to strip a mentally competent woman of control over her own finances because she stopped subsidizing your household, is not an act of care. I see this pattern too often. It doesn't become more acceptable with repetition. She picked up her gavel. Mrs. Calloway's legal fees are to be paid by the petitioners within 60 days. This hearing is adjourned. Claire was crying in the hallway. Brad stood beside her with his arms crossed, looking at the floor. I walked past them toward Eleanor, who put her hand briefly on my arm. It's done, she said. Outside, the April air was cold and smelled like salt water. I stood on the courthouse steps and breathed it in and thought about Robert. That evening, sitting in his chair, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Calloway, my name is Kate. I'm a colleague of Daniel's. I need to tell you something about Amanda. I've been trying to decide whether to reach out for a month. I'm sorry it took me this long. My hands were still. Kate worked in Daniel's department. She and Amanda had been friendly the first 2 years of the marriage, before Kate said something Amanda didn't like and the friendship ended. What she told me now came with screenshots, bank statements, a credit card portal she'd seen open on Amanda's laptop during a work-from-home video call. Amanda had accumulated $68,000 in debt over 3 years. Department store cards, luxury retailers, an online shopping account she'd used daily. Daniel didn't know the half of it. He knew about some debt, Kate said. Not the amount, not where it had gone. The money Daniel had taken from me, month after month, emergency after emergency. A significant portion of it had gone to minimum payments on credit cards. Amanda was running up faster than they could pay down. I sat with that for a long time. Then I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. His voice was strange, stretched. Mom, I've been wanting to call you. I heard what happened at the hearing. A pause. Claire called me. She was upset. Another pause. I'm not calling to defend her. I know, I said. I've been doing a lot of thinking. He stopped. Started again. I went back through our bank accounts, Mom. All of them. Not just the joint ones. I found... He stopped again. I found things I didn't know about. I know, I said again. How much did you know? I found out last night. I kept my voice steady. How bad is it, Daniel? He told me the number. His voice broke on it, just slightly, the way voices break when a person is holding themselves together with real effort. I confronted her this morning. He exhaled. She admitted most of it. She's been ashamed. She said she didn't know how to stop. She said she'd meant to tell me. His voice was very quiet. She also said she was sorry for the petition, for getting Claire involved. She said it had seemed like a solution at the time, and she knows how that sounds. It sounds like she was desperate. That's not an excuse. No, I said. It isn't, but it's something. The silence between us was different from the silences we'd had recently. This one wasn't empty. I don't know what happens next with us, he said. Amanda and me. I don't know. You don't have to know tonight. Mom, I should have called on your birthday. His voice broke properly this time. I knew it was your birthday. She had said she didn't want to go, and He stopped. I should have called. Yes, I said. You should have. I'm sorry. I know you are. I looked at Robert's photograph on the mantel. Come see me when you're ready. Not to talk about money, just to see me. He came the following Sunday. He brought nothing, asked for nothing, sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours and talked to me about his life, his marriage, his fear of what was coming next. I listened. I made us grilled cheese sandwiches, the kind I used to make him after school, and he ate 2 of them without noticing. Before he left, he said, Dad would be disappointed in me. Your father would be proud that you're sitting here right now, I said, showing up when there's nothing to gain from it. Claire took longer. 2 months passed after the hearing with no contact. I filled those months in ways I hadn't expected. I returned to the watercolor class I dropped when Robert died. I joined a grief support group at the hospital where I'd worked and found myself the veteran in the room rather than the newest arrival, and discovered I had more to offer than I'd known. I started walking every morning along the eastern promenade, the water gray and cold and completely indifferent, and found it comforting rather than sad. I called my college roommate Patricia, who lived in Vermont and had been trying to reach me for 2 years, and apologized for disappearing, and we talked for 3 hours. I changed my will. Eleanor handled it cleanly. The bulk of my estate, what remained of it, went into a trust for Lily, accessible at 25. A portion to the hospital's nursing scholarship fund, established in Robert's name. A small amount to Patricia's daughter, who had driven me to my procedure last fall and brought soup afterward and never mentioned it because she didn't want me to feel indebted. Daniel and Claire received the legal minimum. I signed the documents on a Tuesday morning and drove home feeling lighter than I had in 4 years. On a Wednesday in June, my phone rang. Claire's voice on the other end was not the careful, bright voice or the crying voice. It was smaller than either of those and quieter. "Mom, can I bring Lily on Saturday? She's been asking for you." "Of course," I said. They came at 10 in the morning. Lily ran up the porch steps and knocked with both fists. And when I opened the door, she said, "Grammy Maggie, I brought you a picture I made at school." It was a crayon drawing of 2 people, one tall and one small, standing in what appeared to be a garden. "That's you and me," she explained. "You're the one with the flowers." Claire stood at the bottom of the porch steps. She looked thinner and tired, and something in her face had changed. The tightness behind the eyes that had been there for years. "Come in," I said. We sat at the kitchen table while Lily examined every corner of the house as she always did, narrating everything she found. Claire wrapped her hands around her coffee mug and looked at the table. "I don't know where to start," she finally said. "You don't have to start anywhere today." "Mom." She looked up. "Brad lost his job 8 months ago. Not recently. 8 months ago." She swallowed. "We told you it had just happened when we asked for extra money last spring." It wasn't true. He'd been out of work for 4 months by then. Her jaw moved. We were embarrassed. And then we were scared. And then the embarrassment became easier to maintain than the truth. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She looked like someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time. "Is he working now?" "He started a new job 3 weeks ago. Less money but good benefits." She exhaled. "We're going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay." She looked at her hands. "I knew about the petition before we filed it. I want you to know that. I told myself it was concern for you. It wasn't." Her voice dropped. "It was money, Mom. That's what it was. I'm ashamed of that. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to hear me say it." She looked up. The real version. The kitchen was quiet except for Lily in the other room, having a detailed conversation with the houseplants. "I'm not going to resume the transfers," I said. "I know. I'm not going to help with money. Not because I don't love you. Because it stopped being help a long time ago and became something else." Claire nodded. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. "I know that too. What I will do," I said, "is be your mother. If that means anything to you. A Saturday here, a phone call, a holiday dinner, someone who asks how you're doing and wants an actual answer." I paused. "That's what I have to offer. It's not nothing." Claire looked at me across the table and I watched the decision happen in her face, the moment a person chooses honesty over protection. "It's not nothing, Mom," she said quietly. "It's actually what I wanted the whole time. I just didn't know how to ask for it without the other thing attached." Lily came back into the kitchen holding one of Robert's old nature books from the bookshelf. "Grammy Maggie, who drew all these birds? Your great-grandfather bought that book the year your mom was born," I told her. "Sit down. I'll tell you about the birds." She climbed into my lap, the way she always did, immediately and completely, as though there was no question about where she belonged. Claire watched us across the table. She wrapped both hands around her mug and something in her shoulders came down. I tell people sometimes, when they ask, that the year I turned 65 was the worst year of my life. They nod sympathetically and change the subject. What I don't tell them, because it's hard to explain, is that the same year was also the best. Not because of the hearing, or the will, or the moment I canceled those transfers. Because of the morning I sat in Robert's chair with 4 years of bank statements and told myself the truth for the first time. Because of Eleanor saying you are not obligated to fund your own exploitation. Because of Daniel sitting at my kitchen table eating a grilled cheese sandwich and crying. Actually crying. For the first time in years. Because of Claire saying it's actually what I wanted the whole time. Robert used to say that the hardest thing about loving people was accepting that you couldn't love them into being who you needed them to be. You could only love them into having a chance. I'd argued with him about that. I thought if I loved hard enough, long enough, expensively enough, it would fill in whatever was missing. I was wrong. He was right. He was so often right. My 66th birthday, I hosted a dinner. Not the same anxious dinner I'd hosted the year before, set with good china and held together with hope and denial. This one, I planned for the pleasure of it, Robert's prime rib, which takes all day and is absolutely worth it. Patricia and her daughter drove down from Vermont. Eleanor came and brought wine. Daniel came alone. His marriage to Amanda was in a form of uneasy suspension that I had stopped trying to interpret, and he seemed lighter without the weight of managing her presence. He arrived early and helped me set the table and talked to me about a hiking trip he was planning. And I listened to every word. Claire brought Lily, who wore a dress she had chosen herself, green with yellow flowers, completely wrong for March, absolutely right for Lily. Brad came too, quiet and genuinely pleasant in the way that people are when they've stopped performing and started just being themselves. We sat around the table and Lily told 4 separate knock-knock jokes, none of which made any grammatical sense, and everyone laughed anyway. Daniel and Patricia discovered they'd both been to the same national park in the same summer and spent 20 minutes comparing notes. Eleanor told a story about a client from 1987 that I'd heard 3 times and was still funny every time. At some point in the evening, I looked around the table and thought about Robert, about the streamers and the terrible cake and the birthday song, sung completely wrong, about the quiet winter mornings with coffee and the sound of him on the stairs, about the letter he'd left me, which I'd moved from his desk to mine, which I read sometimes when I needed to. You have always been the strong one, he'd told me. I'd believed him finally, not because nothing had hurt, because I had survived the hurting and stayed myself. Lily fell asleep on the couch before dessert. I covered her with the quilt that had been on the back of that couch since before she was born, and she curled into it without waking, one hand curled under her cheek, trusting the way children trust when they feel safe. I went back to the table, to the candlelight and the voices and the particular warmth of people who have chosen to be somewhere. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I'd recently re-added to my contacts. Happy birthday, Mom. I know I don't deserve to say that, but I'm saying it anyway. I'm in therapy now. I know that's not enough. I hope someday it will be. Claire's formal sign-off from before, replaced with something I hadn't seen from her in years. Love, Claire. I held the phone in my lap under the table. I didn't cry. I just sat with it for a moment, with what it cost her to send it and what it meant that she had. Then I put the phone in my pocket and picked up my fork and rejoined my birthday dinner.